If you ever go scrolling through Google Play or the App Store looking for something new to play on your phone, you may find yourself asking, where the hell are all the good mobile games? It felt like we had a really decent glut of games like Doodle Jump, Angry Birds and Fruit Ninja during the Gold Rush years, but now the marketplace feels a bit stagnant. It's notoriously a place that doesn't exactly push forward the highest quality or the most original content, or in the worst case scenario, games with no respect for the audience whatsoever. I know it's easy to poke fun at this market, and hell, I think we've all downloaded a mobile game we kind of enjoy in a guilty pleasure way. I know I have. The fact of the matter is that most of these games aren't primarily made for the classic console gaming audience in mind. The mobile marketplace is the natural evolution and migration destination of all those arcadey flash games we used to play on Newgrounds and Miniclip. Boot it up on a train for a few minutes and put it down just as quick. It's easy but vapid entertainment which is often designed for commuters and time wasting. So the audience and attitudes in designing games for mobile is totally different, because for all intents and purposes, your mobile phone is designed to be an instant gratification device. It's rare to actually sit down and commit to something on mobile, especially a game. Then along came Monument Valley, a crown jewel in the mobile game library. All it uses are some simple touch and swipe mechanics which are beautifully taught to the player. Its design is as elegant as its visuals, and with some solid puzzles and a charming story, there was a lot to love about it. And it was a smash hit. On paper, perhaps it doesn't sound like it should have been very successful. Monument Valley didn't seem to follow any trends or design choices seen in other mobile games. No high scores, no 3-star system, just a short, singular experience. It's not what mobile audience would typically go for, but perhaps that's what made the game stand out to them. Here's Ken Wong, the game's designer, talking about the mobile audience. So many people have mobile devices and they don't necessarily consider themselves gamers. Perhaps they play Candy Crush or Pokemon Go. I love speaking to that audience because they don't care about past traditions of video games. They don't have hang-ups about what a game should be or can be. They're more open to new experiences, I feel. Ken Wong stepped into the gaming ring after a stint working on Alice Madness Returns. Wong later turned to the mobile platform because he spotted there was some untapped potential, pardon the pun, in that space. For me, it was interesting to see someone who's willing to stray off the beaten path to create something that felt unique. I certainly wouldn't go so far to call Wong a rebel, but by ignoring the tropes of classic game design, Wong has given himself a considerable amount of breathing room to tell his own stories through games, and it's an added bonus that he's willing to bear the flag for mobile audiences and actually produce something that literally anyone with a mobile phone can play. And who doesn't own a mobile phone? Shortly after the release of Monument Valley, Ken Wong left Us2 Games to form a new studio called Mountains. And if you take one look at their team page, you'll know these guys are brimming with great talent and are passionate about telling stories with games. Ken Wong's, and by extension Mountains' design philosophy is clearly evident in the studio's debut game, Florence, which if you liked Monument Valley or just have an itch for a good mobile game, then this is the game for you. The game takes you through an important chapter in the life of Florence, a young woman living in the city, working a dead-end job who falls in and out of love. The story unravels through a variety of mini-games that take full advantage of the touchscreen for a wealth of gameplay applications. You'll construct sentences by arranging puzzle pieces, tap manically to convince your boyfriend to follow his dreams, and shake it like a Polaroid picture to develop a holiday memory. These are all simple and familiar gestures to anyone who's ever played a mobile game, but what the game accomplishes and conveys through these simple tasks is remarkable. Creative people can always find fun and interesting uses of devices and hardware limitations for storytelling purposes. Just look at Kojima and Metal Gear Solid 1.
It's useless, I told you. I can read your every thought.
I've got it. Use the controller port. Plug your controller into controller port 2. If you do that, he won't be able to read your mind.
I personally love this kind of thing. When approaching the use of the touchscreen, Wong stated, that was a big area of exploration when we were starting on Florence, thinking, what are all the different ways we can use the touchscreen? And how can we evoke a different emotion that way, or remind people of a different moment? In the case of Florence, several parts of the game are designed to play out not only as if you were doing these tasks physically, but emotionally too. While you're chatting on your first date, you may notice the puzzle getting increasingly easy, as holding a conversation becomes effortless for Florence. When you're moving in for the first time, you may notice that you've bought more stuff than you can actually fit, so you have to put some stuff away in storage. You're going to have to make some hard decisions on that one. And it expertly captures what it feels like to get into a heated argument, as the game literally turns into a competition to see who can yell the most. Hands down, the best part was Chapter 18, called Let Go. I don't want to spoil it, but for me it was a near perfect moment in terms of gameplay and narrative. The game is not afraid to show the ugly side and turbulence that comes with being in a relationship. It captures a truth which isn't overplayed and will likely resonate with several players. What Florence can do that other mediums are less good at is establishing a strong emotional connection to their love story, because you're a part of it. Florence's greatest strength is how it marries its gameplay with its themes and narrative to create empathy between the player and Florence, and it's remarkable how effortlessly this game manages to pull this off with just a few simple tap and swipe gestures. So while Florence excels at delivering a compelling and emotive narrative experience, I'm not sure it will reach the heights it deserves. It was made from the ground up to be a mobile game, and many aspects of its storytelling wouldn't be possible or as effective on a standard controller. So while mobile is the perfect platform for it, it's kind of hamstrung by that market, at least on the surface level, and that's for a handful of reasons. It's not the longest game in the world, it only took me around 45 minutes to complete, and because it has such a focused and singular narrative, there's no real incentive to replay it. The game is also relatively expensive compared to other apps. At full price, the game cost me £4, which is perhaps a little bit steep, and it's fighting for consumer attention against other games that cost nothing. Ironically though, these are the same kind of complaints levelled at Monument Valley, and as I mentioned earlier, that game did pretty well for itself. Hell, it got into House of Cards, so it was certainly doing something right. For Florence though, the big kicker is perhaps its visibility on mobile stores, because as a general rule, if you want to find some genuinely good games, you're gonna have to do some hunting. Google have recently made the effort to try and shine a light on some of these indie gems, and they even gave Florence the coveted title of Indie Game of the Month. But that still hasn't equated to download figures even close to that of the competition. Word of mouth is very much going to be a driving factor for this game's popularity, so consider this video as my recommendation. As a studio, I would very much like to see Mountains become successful. It's pretty neat how they brand themselves as a craft game studio. I love the idea that they're driven to make passion projects with resonating stories that may not play or function like typical games. And if you follow Wong's line of thinking, then the mobile platform is perfectly suited for this kind of experience. I also really like the idea that Ken Wong and Mountains are driven to make games which are a subtle showcase for the power of the medium, especially for an unsuspecting mobile audience, with more fluid opinions and expectations on what a game should be. Florence is kind of designed to bridge that connection, to make use of the huge mobile platform, and make use of the App Store to connect stories about love and beauty to that massive potential audience. Playing Florence feels like a genuinely fresh and amazing experience, and due to its simple controls and universal themes, it's truly a game that can be played and appreciated by anyone.